Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome back or welcome from the internet if you just joined for this session. And so today I have the pleasure of introducing Liesl Krause from Purdue Polytechnic. Liesl today will talk to us about how to work with your advisor. And she has a bunch of really cool workshop event things, breakouts that we'll go through together. And she's a PhD candidate right now, and she has her bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Villanova University and her master's in biomedical engineering from Purdue University. Currently, she is studying the mental well-being of graduate students using data collected from social media discussions. And I was just talking right before this with her in general about her research, and it's super cool. And so offline, totally check out what she's doing. And in her free time, she loves learning about dog training and is currently training 2 project puppies with her fiance. And the puppies might interrupt very briefly during our discussion today. Which is totally awesome. And so without further ado, I just wanted to let her take it away. And she's from PhD Balance. I forgot to mention that she is the president. And yeah, I'll let her do the talking from now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I am the president of PhD Balance. And I would like to think of this as a really interactive workshop. So if at any point you have questions or comments, please feel free to drop them in the chat or unmute yourself if I'm in a lull. And at various points, we'll have breakout rooms to do a little bit of what I call think, pair, share. So think, pair, share, if you're not familiar with that term from the education standpoint, means I'll give you guys a minute to think about what your answers will be. Then you'll go into breakout rooms and share with each other in pairs. It'll be more than 2 people though. And then we'll come back together as a group and we'll share out what we've learned and what we've discussed. So today I'll be talking a little bit about how to work with your advisor, which I know can be something really difficult to navigate. So I want to help give you guys some tools that you can use to work with your advisor and make that relationship better and stronger. So this is a quote I like to start this workshop off with all the time. It would be unthinkable to allow people to practice a skilled profession without first being trained for it, especially if their mistakes could cause harm to others, unless they are college faculty members. And this is a real quote from Teaching and Learning STEM by Felder and Brent, which is a great resource if you are in the STEM education field. Highly recommend it. But this is how they start off their entire book. And the more you think about it, the more this is true. The people who are our mentors and our teachers, they have been trained to be really good at whatever their research field is. So if they're electrical or computer engineers, they're probably really awesome electrical and computer engineers. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best professors, that they're the best mentors, or that they're the best managers. So let's talk a little bit more about what our advisors are and are not trained to do. So what is our advisor trained for? Running experiments, writing papers, finding scientific problems, and designing experiments. That's pretty much it. When you get a PhD, those are the general skills that you should be able to walk out of that PhD with. On a base level, like non-discipline specific. I'm sure we can all think of some very specific skills in our disciplines that our advisor might be trained in specifically, but beyond these 4 things, we can expect that they probably had no mandatory training. So let's talk a little bit about what some things besides those 4 things are that you need from your advisor. So I'm going to give you about a minute right now, and I will time you guys. I have my handy dandy stopwatch. So I'll give you guys a minute right now just to think on your own about what you need from your advisor. And then I'll give you 4 minutes in breakout rooms to talk with a few of your peers about what you need from your advisor. And then we'll come back together and talk about some of those things as a group, okay? So here's your minute starting now. Oh, advisors, please do not drop out. This should be helpful for you as well, and please don't take this as a as a dunk on you.
I was just kidding. Yeah.
Okay, I figured.
But did want to disclose that I'm an advisor in this group. So
Yeah, of course. All right, that is 1 minute. So now if we could have everyone go into some breakout sessions, and I'll set a 4-minute timer, and just share with your peers what you thought about during that 1 minute. So I'll give a second for the breakout rooms to get set up, and then we'll start our 4-minute timer.
Okay, I will launch it now. Ready? Okay.
Yep, thanks. All right, looks like people have dispersed.
Oh, I feel so accomplished.
As you should.
So I could broadcast messages first. So should I give like a 10, 15-second heads up or?
Yeah, let's give, so I think when you close the rooms, it'll give them a minute before the room will completely close. So I can tell you when that 1 minute time is there, and then it'll count down for them. Oh, I lost you. You're back. I thought I lost you.
I accidentally entered Lily's breakout room. She didn't have anyone in her room.
Oh.
Hi, I was lonely, but I'm back in the main room now.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, so should I? How long did you say the breakout room? I was so focused on setting them up. I did it.
Oh, it's gonna be 4 minutes. I set a
okay.
timer, so I'll tell you when the 1 minute mark is set, and then you can close them, and it'll give them all a minute to finish talking.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Hi, Elba. Hey, Elba. I'm curious if I could be co-host because I think unless you want to stay in
Is it a
control
problem that
of-
I'm on?
No. If
By
you
the
want
way?
to be in charge of breakout rooms, I think it gave you back control because you're the meeting person that launched it.
Say that again?
So I think since it's your Zoom room, you're in charge. So if you want to stay in charge, it's totally fine. If you want me to do the breakout rooms, I can do it, whatever you prefer. I don't have access anymore, is all I'm saying.
I can give you powers. Sorry.
Yes, awesome.
That's what I was fearing, that if I joined again, I would basically take over, and I apologize for that.
I see. No, that's totally fine. I'm just amazed about how this works.
Yeah,
We're at about
and
that
sorry.
1 minute. Oh, sorry, no, we're just at about that 1 minute mark. So whenever you're ready to close the breakout rooms.
Okay, so if I press breakout, close all rooms, it'll give them a minute?
It should give them a minute and should count down.
Okay.
People should start trickling back.
Whoa.
When I set up breakout rooms for my students, I do like a 10 or 15-second countdown and they like scramble back. It's pretty fun.
Amazing.
Also, Abdul,
Oh.
I hope it's still recording.
It
I
is.
hope I
I think
didn't
it's
hijack.
recording. No. I think it's recording this entire discussion right now. So
Perfect. Then I will be quiet.
no, that's fine.
All right.
I guess all of us are back into the main room.
Welcome
Yep.
back.
Welcome back, everyone. All right, so thank you all for taking a moment to do that. So can I have a few people who are willing to share, kind of just share the general summary of what you discussed in your groups of what you need from your advisor?
I can go ahead with that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So here's what my take was, and the other student also agreed on this. So what I need from the advisor is exactly right there in the name, advice, right?
Mhm.
I want his advice on how to carry out research, or what research areas are going to be beneficial for me or in getting a job. I don't want him to push me into saying that this is a deadline that you need to target, or this is the work that you need to do. That's my PhD, right? So the work is still mine. I need to uh, narrow down what I want to work on, and I could use her advice, since he has been or she has been in the area for academia for years, that what topics are gonna benefit me. So again, coming back to the general idea there is that advice, advice from his experience.
Great. Yeah. So, we're not looking for somebody necessarily to give us like worksheets each day on what needs to happen. We're looking for somebody to kind of generally guide our research when we don't know where to go with it. I think that's great. Anyone else? And you can disagree with that as well if that's not what you need as a student.
I can share
Mhm.
what I discussed with an advisor. But my perspective was that, in the initial parts of the PhD, one is the student seeks a lot of technical inputs. Students also seek some inputs regarding, how to write your paper or how to give a talk. But over the course of your PhD, you do seek more of career level inputs, like, where should I, how should I plan my career, or how should I get more visibility, or, more of things that are not, again, it can be summarized as advice, but the type of advice differs a lot over the years.
Okay, yeah. So what you need at the beginning of your PhD when you're first coming in and maybe don't have the research background can differ from what you would need at the end of your PhD, where you probably need more help on transitioning like into industry or into an academic career that is not you being a student anymore. I think that's great. And a lot of literature does support that the needs of the students change over time. Great. Anyone else?
One thing that came, oh,
Yeah, sorry, Lillian, go ahead.
I was just going to continue on that previous point, because I think one of the other classes of advice that you look for later as a graduate student is also sort of interpersonal advice, how to communicate with co-authors, how to seek out new co-authors, and sort of how to manage collaboration in more of a leadership role.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's great. Being able to learn kind of those networking skills and figuring out like who's already out there from somebody who's more experienced in the field than you is great. Great thing that you might need from your advisor. Yeah. And somebody else was speaking.
Yeah, I was just going to add that
Mhm.
this is something that's usually not on the radar of students when they start a grad program, because they're looking forward to good things. But there's usually there's usually a period where you hit a low, and I think that's when the advisor kind of helps out the most, right? And I've kind of been on both ends of this as an advisee and as an advisor, and I think that is something that is super important, right? And like you were saying earlier, usually advisors are not trained to learn it, right? And so I kind of learned it on the job, but that's something that I think really will help every student, because almost every student goes through a period of an extreme low.
Yeah, that's a really great point. That graduate student does come, or graduate school does come with a lot of difficulties, and it's inevitable that anyone will experience a low period during their PhD. And research does also show that the advisor is kind of the number one point of contact for being able to support a student through those experiences. Now, that doesn't mean, because I always like to caveat this, that doesn't mean that we're expecting our advisors to be our therapists, our psychiatrists, or our counselors. If you are seeking mental health advice specifically, or you need professional mental illness care, you need to speak to a mental health professional about those things, and that is not your advisor, and that is not their job. However, if you are going through a difficult time and you need more support in lab, or you need to take a break from coursework, those are the kinds of things that an advisor can definitely be there for. An advisor can also definitely be there to remind you that like it is tough and things are hard. But we can do this together and working together as a pair on the research rather than feeling like you have to go it alone or feeling isolated. I think that's a wonderful point. And I love to hear that advisors recognize that that is something that they can help their students with, is getting through those poor experiences of graduate school as well. I think that's awesome. Does anyone else feel confident in sharing? Are we ready to, you're like, Liesl, we've talked too much about this.
One of the things we talked about, apart from what has already been discussed, is what I call as a logistical support, right? So in our field, we need, computing resources or office space. So either it's, through fetching grants or, talking to colleagues in the department. I think this is something PhD probably doesn't teach a person, and then, expected to do that on the job as an advisor.
Yeah, working out those logistical issues. And I would say that kind of falls under the managerial role of an advisor, right? Like the advisor is kind of like the boss of the lab. So if there are resources like lab space or computers or anything that you need that you don't have, the advisor is kind of the first point of contact for making sure that you can get those resources. Yeah, that's a great point. Anyone else? Okay, those are all really great points. I love that you guys thought from, logistics of resources and funding and that kind of stuff, all the way through like emotional and mental support that you might need and everything in between there. So you can see that being an advisor is really a nuanced job. There's more to it than some people might think from the training that they receive, right? Because again, like you can get your PhD and then go become a faculty member and an advisor. So do you feel as you're getting your PhD, like you're being prepared for all of these other things that your students might need from you? And I'm willing to bet that the answer is no in most cases. So Let's talk about how you get the support you need. So before I give you guys some of the tips and tricks that I have kind of picked up over the years and done some of my own research on, I'm curious to know how you might go about getting the support that you need. So again, we're going to do the 1 minute, 4 minute system. So I'm going to set a timer for 1 minute for you to think about how you currently ask your advisor for support, whether that be emotional support, technical support or logistical support, and what methods have worked for you in the past. All right, so 1 minute for personal reflection, starting now. All right, minute up. So now I'm going to set a timer for 4 minutes again. And if we could go into those breakout rooms, different breakout rooms or the same breakout rooms, I don't mind either way. And just again, share with your peers some ways that you get the support you need and be prepared to share out when we come back. All right, so I'll wait to see how the little faces disappear.
Hi, Elba. There's an odd number and it seems like you ended up in the odd room.
Ha! That's totally fine. I'll just stay in the main session.
That is always the danger of doing breakout rooms randomly.
Yeah. I'm curious how many people got the same person as the previous time as well.
Yeah.
Fine, but
it works either way, to be honest.
yeah, these are pretty general prompts, so it's not like you're meeting someone new. So it's the same thing.
Yeah. And I like doing it this way because it gives people a little bit of time to reflect on their own answers first. And then also, if somebody is feeling particularly shy about their answer, they get to practice it in front of a much smaller audience first.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
I like these breakout session things.
Yeah. I have to get better at using, I know about Think, Pair, Share. It's like an actual technique that you learn in education classes for classroom management.
Mm-hmm.
And I know how effective it is. I put it in my presentations, but gosh darn it, if I don't walk into a classroom and forget that that is a tool in my back pocket every single day.
Yeah, it's actually really good. I've only recently heard about it. Like you said, we're not trained as teachers. We just kind of learn on the spot, but it's very useful.
Yeah.
I heard of a really recent tool that I really liked, which is like throwing energy from one person to another through Zoom, which is really cool. So you just have everyone turn on their video and just take something and throw it to someone else, like just virtually, and just basically say, I'm throwing my energy to Elba, and she catches it for someone else. That's not me. And just kind of makes everyone off for just 5 seconds to name someone else in the room and send them their energy. Pretty effective.
I'm not feeling anything. You're lying.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't send it yet.
You lied. You didn't send it.
That's pretty funny. I like that. Yeah. I teach in what they're calling high flex right now. So we use Microsoft Teams, and my students can come in person, but they always have the option to join us virtually instead. And they're supposed to join us virtually, you know, under certain circumstances where they might be in isolation or quarantine. So it's always like a little bit weird because like I always have like 2 or 3 students who are like completely online, and then the rest of them are like in classroom with me, but we're all talking through Teams to not like exclude those 3 students. And we're at our 1 minute mark, so if you want to start,
Oh, yes, yes.
yeah, thank you. It's just very interesting to try and like catch the vibe of like, am I getting my virtual students engaged? I don't know.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't know.
I have no idea. I wasn't on either the receiving end or the teaching end for the pandemic, so I actually have no idea how this goes, unfortunately. I think it would have been a good experience to have. Oh, you haven't either?
Huh?
Or are you just you have or haven't?
Oh, I
you
have.
did mention you
That's it's super weird. I just, the high flex thing is weird. Just not being completely one way or the other. I think is the difficult part for me.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Looks like people are starting to trickle back in.
Yeah.
Solid. I'll give it another second. All right, it looks like we're pretty much back. All right, so thank you again for participating. So can I have a few people share out, you know, what are some things that your group talked about in terms of getting support? How do you get it? Feel free to just unmute and talk. I'm very laid back. You don't have to like formally do anything.
Well, I can go. I I thankfully have a relationship with my advisor where I can be pretty frank about what I'm feeling or the stresses I'm getting, and I'm able to just relay how I'm doing, be it attention-wise. I have ADHD, so I can tell them this was a good week or this was a bad week, and this is my plan. So it's, if you have that relationship with your advisor that you can share your status, not just on your work, but personal, it really does help. But I don't know how easy it would be if I didn't have that relationship or I didn't have that camaraderie with my advisor to begin with.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Sometimes it's as simple as asking, but that might not always be the case depending on how you feel about talking to your advisor. Yeah. Someone else?
One other thing that came up for us was like modes of communication with your advisor. So it's one thing to bring something up in a one-on-one meeting and actually be speaking about it. It's another thing to have to send a bunch of emails to get a response, to get the support you need, or, you know, some people do like Slack or instant messaging with their advisors, and how that changes the dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and that also kind of just depends on like how it's best to talk to your advisor too. Like I know some advisors, it's like really easy to email them and they're like right on it, right? And then other advisors, you email them and it's like, well, it's been 2 months and I guess that's okay. Um, and same with, you know, using Slack or IM or even talking in person. Sometimes, you know, you could ask a very direct question and they won't actually get back to you in any meaningful way for a while. And you just got to find the one that works best for both parties there. Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Someone else?
I just wanted to expand a little bit more on Elba's point, right? So yeah, she's got a great relationship with her advisor, and it's entirely possible that, you know, new students who might have just entered the lab don't realize that they could also have a great relationship, or, you know, not realize that, you know, when things are not going well, the advisor is actually going to be, you know, pretty helpful when they reach out, right? So one thing that I think grad students can do is to set up a culture in the lab where they kind of advertise the fact that, they had a rough week. They went and told the advisor, and the advisors was cool and, let them, take the time they needed, right? And so if you can kind of set up a culture where you, again, this is, I think, hard for grad students to do, to acknowledge that I had a hard week, but, everyone has those hard weeks, right? And so when you have a hard week, share it with your lab mates, share it with your advisor. If things go well, share that again with your lab mates, so they know that when they go through a rough time, they can go talk to their advisors.
Yeah, I agree. Lab culture is so important, and it really does start with us as graduate students, being able to talk to each other openly, and then, being able to, almost use your advisor as a mediator for that sometimes too. Like, um, saying like, oh, I talked to our advisor about how the lab equipment is always breaking and I don't know why. And it went really well. And they were able to call in the technician and they got in right away. And it was awesome. Something as simple as that in passing when you're, on your way to lunch or something can really help. Bring the lab together. And I think it's also important to recognize that part of lab culture is being nice to our other students. So when new students come into the lab, how do we interact with them? How do we treat them? Are we inviting them to those lab lunches? Are we inviting them to that Frisbee game on the weekend? That can all play a really critical part in making sure that the supportive culture is there. And, including your advisor in that can be super awesome to make sure that they're also a part of that culture. Yeah, that's a great point. I really love that. Someone else?
Hi, so this is Apurva. So yeah, like, so one thing that we do, I guess, like to also advertise what you can get from your advisor is that we take care of all of this logistics and what each person is working on, how much have they progressed on in one single group meeting, where we just have like one slide which says, what are we working on? What do we want to accomplish next? Are we stuck at some point? So you can get that support not only just from your advisor, but also other lab mates who might have worked on or faced something similar like that. And then in the same slide, you can also say like, hey, I need some more time. Like, so you can ask for some time from the advisor, depending on where you're stuck at, or you can bring up like logistic issues like, hey, I need this particular equipment, or I'm like, trying to apply to some new fellowships or such, like I need some letters or something. So can you like set up a time for me like separately to address these issues?
Yeah, I think that's great. And that sounds like it's an excellent compromise between needing one-on-one meetings with an advisor and also understanding that the advisor is busy, especially if you have a really large lab. I think that's like a really great way to say like, this week is really critical that I meet one-on-one with you because I have X, Y, and Z going on. Where, there are other times when you might just not need that one-on-one meeting and it would be better for you and your advisor if you just had that time to work on something instead. So that sounds like an amazing compromise and a really great system for making sure that everyone in the lab is getting what they need. I really like that. Someone else?
I guess something that just in like one-on-one meetings that I've had with advisors and mentors before, and especially in instances where I had goals in mind and those definitely didn't come to fruition in any capacity whatsoever. Something that I've done that might work in certain cases has been like kind of trying to flip the question on instead of asking what did I do wrong, more asking these were my expectations going into the summer or going into this project, and this is what we ended up realizing, and I'm just wondering like what we could have done differently in order to get from point A to point B. And I've realized that a lot of times my advisors and mentors will kind of come back to me and say, actually, that wasn't kind of on you. It was on other factors that were going on or something that they weren't aware of kind of starting out with the process. And at least this kind of helped me realize that it's not necessarily all on me. And I guess like negative experiences do sometimes happen.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's important. I think you bring up a really awesome point that, you know, negative experiences do happen, and we can't always have the ideal relationship that we want. And so sometimes it's going to be about mitigating those difficult situations, and it's going to be about making sure that we have the tools to move forward from them rather than just necessarily working them out perfectly in that first moment. Yeah.
I just wanted to add a quick point about the role that other people, not just my actual advisor, but my lab mates or other mentors that I've come across have played a role in advising me, because I think oftentimes the advisor himself or herself is not available for whatever reason. And it's important to identify other people who can provide you the support you need around you. So we should, at least I try to look for other people, maybe in my lab or in the community in general, who can also mentor or advise.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That sometimes the advisor that you are assigned to or just happen to be working with because that's your PI is not always the person that you have to go to for advice. There are other people that you can seek out for help if you're not getting what you need from the person that is supposed to be giving you what advice and mentoring you need to succeed. Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. So it sounds like we have a lot of different ways that we all get the support that we need from our advisor. And I really like the variety of different methodologies that I see here. Does anyone have one other one that they want to share before I move on here? All right. So moving on, I'm going to talk about some of the tips and tricks that I have learned and researched in helping to build that relationship with your advisor so that you can have a healthier and better relationship moving forward. Something that you've heard me speak a little bit about language-wise and that you'll hear me talk a little bit more about is that you really have to think about you and your advisor as having a relationship. And that doesn't mean like romantic relationship. It means more like a peer relationship, right? So for that, you want to make sure that you guys have healthy communication skills. That is critical in any kind of relationship, but especially professional ones, where you want to make sure that you are both achieving the goals that you need to achieve with the help of each other. So in communication, you want to be direct. If you are having trouble with something, you can say, I need someone to guide me through this procedure because I have never done it before. Or I need you to review this manuscript by Friday so I have time to make your changes before the submission deadline. Typically, when I hear about people not getting the support they need from their advisor, they are skirting around the issue of saying to their advisor directly, like, I need this. They're just assuming that their advisor knows that these are the things that they need. And, when writing papers, you can get that paper to your advisor really early. And just depending on the work style of your advisor, they could get that paper back to you with corrections 20 minutes before the due date. And that can be really stressful. And so telling them the expectations of, I need a full day to implement whatever you have done, or I need the weekend to implement whatever changes you recommend, is just going to make your life a whole lot easier in terms of making sure that those expectations are set and they're clear, and you're very direct about it. Advisors are not mind readers. and you can't expect them to be. You can't expect anyone to be a mind reader. So this is, great advice for working with your advisor and just in general with other people. If you need something from them, just tell them straight up, this is what I need from you. And that should make everything go a lot smoother. Also, I'm going to recommend that you get everything in writing. This is a good thing to know, not just for dealing with your advisor in grad school, but also for any kind of professional communications you have moving forward. And this is just good practice. And the reason why you want to do this is for those worst case scenarios. I'm not saying that you're going to have this experience every time. You might not ever have this experience. And if you never have this experience, I applaud you and so lucky. But there are times where you will agree to something with another person verbally, and then they will change their mind on it. And they will come back to you with their new expectations without ever having agreed to those new expectations with you. And that is a really difficult situation when you have nothing to prove what the original expectations were. So even if you just had a one-on-one meeting with your advisor and you went over everything and you're feeling really great and really confident about your goals and your work expectations for the next semester, shoot them a quick email with a summary of what you both just said. That holds you both accountable to that discussion and what those goals and expectations were. That way, at the end of the semester, when you're talking about, how the semester went, you can say it went really well. I met, these are the expectations and goals that we laid out, and these are the expectations and goals that I met, and they align very well. It makes it so easy to be able to have that kind of conversation. And then again, if you are in that worst case scenario where somebody is asking you to do things that you do not have time for or you did not expect to take on that semester, you can say, hey, I understand that that might be important to you right now, but we discussed X, Y, and Z at the beginning of the semester. And so I need you to take one of those things off of my plate if you want to take me to take on this new expectation. It makes it a very, very easy way for you to lay that out in that relationship. Speaking about expectations, I highly recommend making a work order. This is a really great way to document what those expectations and goals are and have everything in writing. So I've made these in the past when working with advisors and with, if I'm mentoring an undergraduate student, I make them make one for themselves and myself. Really, any kind of working relationship where I have expectations that need to be met, I make a work order. So if you're looking for advice on how to do that, you can go to phdbalance.com, go to our resources, and under academic success, I have a Word template on there. And really all it is I ask you to set some goals for the semester, some tasks that will help you achieve those goals, and a couple of deadlines of when you expect to have those tasks done by. And then at the bottom, you and your advisor sign that. So if you have had the problem in the past where you don't know what the expectations for a semester are, you're just told work on this project. And you're like, great, I can work on that project, but I don't know what needs to be done for that project. Here's a great way to start that conversation. All right, what are the goals that we have for this project? What are some actions that need to be done to achieve those goals? This will help you stay more organized as a student. It'll help your advisor understand what's happening with that project, and you can agree on times when you want to check in about those deliverables. So we were talking a little bit before about how it's not always feasible to have weekly one-on-one meetings with your advisor. You're busy, your advisor's busy. Totally understandable. But when you have something important that's just finishing up, maybe that's the time when you really need that one-on-one meeting. So if you can set up, 4 or 5 one-on-one meetings with your advisor over the course of a semester, and at those 4 or 5 meetings, you're definitely going to have a lot of work to show them because you've worked on these actions and these deliverables, and now you have that ready for your advisor at that date. Man, You're going to feel so awesome going into that meeting, so prepared. You're going to have lots to talk about, and hopefully your advisor, who knows that this is one of only 4 meetings they're going to get with you that semester, is also super prepared to look over what you've done, get feedback, and send you on your way for the next deliverable deadline. This kind of mirrors industry and what you would expect from a boss. And this is really what that relationship is trying to mirror when you're working on specific projects. So I highly recommend checking out making a work order. Look at our template if you're looking to start one. Also, I highly recommend telling your advisor your anticipated work schedule. So another stressor that we hear from graduate students is that their advisor might expect more work out of them than they can give, or might expect a different schedule from them than they are able to give. We all have our own personal lives, and we all have different family expectations and personal expectations. So maybe, you can't get daycare for your kids on Wednesdays, so you need to be working from home on Wednesdays and not in the lab. Make that clear to your advisor at the beginning of the semester, because that'll just make everything a lot easier. Make that expectation clear. Say, hey, Wednesdays, I can't get childcare, so I'm going to have to be working from home. But I'll be in the lab Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So if we need to make a meeting in our lab space, can we keep it to one of those 4 days? And that's a pretty reasonable thing to ask for, especially if you're still getting work done on those Wednesdays. Just giving your advisor an idea of, hey, I'm going to be working in the lab Monday through Friday from 8 to 4, but I really need to go home at 4. I just can't focus as well after that time because, my ADHD medication wears off at that time. Or, I can really only focus on a task for this amount of time a day. Setting that boundary and making it clear that that is your boundary and that's what you need to be doing, that's going to be important for making this whole relationship, again, work a lot easier. And, understand that maybe your advisor has some of those boundaries too, and you might need to work a little bit with that. So, if your advisor can't get childcare on Mondays and specifically doesn't teach classes on Mondays so they can stay home and work from home, don't expect your advisor to come into the lab on Mondays. They're giving you Wednesdays, you give them Mondays. That's what this working relationship is all about, is setting expectations and boundaries and respecting them. All right. And now we're going on to honesty. So firstly, I want you guys to learn to say no. I want you to be honest with yourself. I want you to be honest with your advisor. You cannot do it all. If your advisor is ever asking too much of you, because that is another common stressor that we hear from graduate students, be confident in saying no. And again, this is where those documents that we talked about earlier can come into play. If somebody is asking you to take on extra work and extra responsibilities, you can pull up that work order and be like, hey, these tasks that we laid out are going to take all of the time that I have to work effectively without the quality of the work decreasing. If you would like this extra responsibility taken care of, I need you to lower expectations for one of these other responsibilities. And if that's the case, if something more important than one of those other things comes up, be willing to change that work order, but make sure that you do change that work order. But that way, it's a nice way of saying no. You're laying out those expectations and you're saying, I can't do this all. And then make sure that you're holding each other accountable. So again, coming back to that work order idea, if you set on and agree upon a series of dates that you need to have different deliverables by, have different project deadlines done by, make sure that you're holding yourself and to those, and then make sure that you're holding your advisor to those. So if your advisor isn't holding themselves to what you agreed, talk with them about bringing somebody, talk to them about it and bring someone else in to mediate if you feel that that is something that's needed. So if you don't have a great relationship with your advisor and they're consistently missing those deadlines when you need feedback in order to move forward, maybe talk to them first about it. Say, hey, I noticed that you're not really giving me feedback. You know, we agreed upon these days. Is there something else that we can do to make this work? And if they're not really helping you with that, then maybe say, hey, you know, I feel like we're not communicating well. Let's maybe talk to the department head, or let's talk to the ombudsman and see if they can come in and help mediate a discussion between us so that we can both feel like we're making progress in this project. And again, that's not something that needs to be accusatory. You shouldn't be like, you're not getting back to me on this feedback. That's not a good way to handle it. You're saying, hey, I understand things happen, but we need to move forward and I need your feedback to do that.
So Liesl, can I just interject on this one here?
Yeah, of course, please go.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to figure out, so, you know, this is, I think, a huge ask, right? So anytime you ask somebody else to intervene in an advisee relationship, it's maybe past the point of being, of getting back on track. So I'm just wondering what might be easier, and you know, maybe one option is to seek out a member on the thesis committee who, you know, who maybe you relate better to, who you think is an ally, and let them know that things aren't going well. And then, you know, so, you know, they could just ask a question saying, hey, I'm on this, you know, I'm on this committee. I haven't heard any updates from the student for a while. What's going on? Shall we have a meeting to discuss? I think that might be the least confrontational method of getting an advisor to pay attention, maybe. Like, you know, this is a hard question. I mean, I'm kind of thinking on the fly, and maybe that's the best I can come up with, which is seek out allies who might be able to intervene without a finger pointing at you, that you kind of, you know, brought it up and, you know, complained to somebody.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Seeking out somebody who is kind of at the same level, if you will, with your advisor, who can be your ally in that situation and be the person who will support you, is a great option. And I also think that language is super important here. I like to, in these kinds of situations, almost like refer the blame back on myself in a way. And what I mean by that is saying, hey, it seems like, you know, we're having trouble meeting these deadlines. Is there something I can do to help us meet these deadlines? And so what that does is it takes all of the blame and the language off of the other person. And it but it still makes the point of like something needs to change. And maybe it's something is as simple as like, hey, you've been emailing me about this, and I honestly just don't check my email because I get 1,000 emails a day. Can you just IM me about this and we'll get right back on track? I think that was a really great point. Before I move on from this, because this is kind of the last slide of like those tips and tricks, does anyone else have any feedback like that or any questions about ways that you could implement these things?
I have a general question about cultural differences when it comes to saying no and things like that. So I guess in some cultures, it come off as very rude for you to kind of speak up to someone, not speak up, but kind of using one of these tricks and tactics might be in my culture different than the advisor's culture, for example. And that kind of puts a barrier to trying to use the say no technique, for example. So how do you pull those off, or how do you bring the cultural baggage to the surface, I guess? Or is that something you don't? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's definitely something that is tricky to navigate. So in education, we have this idea of like culturally responsive mentoring and culturally responsive teaching. And I would say in general, in a perfect world, the onus is on the advisor to make the student feel that they're being accepted in the culture. So studies have shown previously, for example, that if a advisor is more willing to learn about the culture of their graduate student, so if a graduate student comes from a culture where family holidays are very important, and they allow their student to go home for a month for family holidays, then that makes that relationship of the advisor and the student a lot stronger. That's a lot maybe to ask for some advisors. Some advisors might not understand the cultures of their students. And so in those cases, maybe that is something where you both just need to sit down and talk about it, which I understand could also be really difficult. And this could be something where, you know, you can't use this say no technique, but you could, you know, just kind of say like, okay, I hear you, put it down on the list. And when they ask about it next time, say, oh yeah, it's on my list, but I have these other things to get to first. So you're showing them that it's still important to you and you're still listening to them and trying to respect them. But you're also putting yourself first in that way and prioritizing what was already agreed upon and what you're already working on. So it can definitely be a tricky situation, and it can vary very differently based off of, you know, what kind of relationship you have with your advisor already before something might arise, and just who you are and who your advisor is as people. But you know, I would say in a perfect world, the onus is on the advisor to be culturally responsive to the students. Um, I understand that it's not a perfect world and that might not happen. And so in that case, you know, do the best you can with what you got. Try to make it work. And if it really just isn't working, if there's too much of a culture clash there, um, that might be a time where, you know, you consider changing advisors, which I understand is also a privilege. Any other comments or questions about any of this? I love this, by the way. You guys are like asking and probing at like a lot of really good points here. And I do want to say, like, obviously these are not perfect. You know, these are tools that you can use and adapt as needed.
I have a question. What are the situations or what are the moments when you feel that you do need to pull that ultimate decision of this is not working? What is the point where that is actually a valid option on the table? I need to find a new advisor. This is not working.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's a great question. And I think that that is a personal decision, but I can give you some guide points about questions that you might ask yourself before making that decision. So ask yourself, how is your mental health? Are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? Are you happy when you wake up in the morning? Are you using unhealthy coping mechanisms to get through your day? Do you feel dread or misery when you have to interact with your advisor? Do you feel like you are in a hopeless situation? Can you see the end in sight? Or does this feel like it's something you have to just put up with for the rest of your life? Those are all really heavy questions. But if you're coming to the point where you need to be changing advisors, I think those are some of the things that people experience when they reach that point. In my personal experience, when I decided to get my master's instead of my PhD in biomedical engineering, it was to the point where close family and friends were saying that I was not myself. I had severe depression, and the symptoms were becoming very visible to those around me. So if you are reaching the point where you feel you may need to switch advisors, the answer is probably yes. Something needs to change. You know, if you constantly have had talks with your advisor about what needs to change and they're being ignored, and if you've tried to mediate the situation through committee members or department heads or ombudsmans already and things aren't getting better, you know, that's just maybe even more of a sign that it's time to cut your losses. But it's definitely a personal decision, and that line is different for everyone.
Those are a really good set of questions to ask yourself, I think. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, and it can be really difficult. I don't want to like downplay that at all.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? If not, I'll get into a little bit of like practice with how to use like standing up for yourself communication techniques before we go into final question phase of the workshop.
Sounds good.
All right. So practice. So what I'll do is I will read the practice here, and then I will give you guys a minute to think it over yourselves personally, and then we'll go into breakout rooms for, let's say, we got some time. Let's say 5 minutes this time. And just think about like how you would deal with this situation if this was you. So you and your advisor have agreed to submit an abstract to a conference. The data analysis is almost done, and the abstract deadline is in 2 weeks. You write an abstract, inferring what you can about from the current analysis, and send it to your advisor. You ask that they review it by the end of the week, so you have 1 full week to make the edits and submit it early. They do not contact you at week's end or at the start of the next week. What do you do? So 1 minute to think about it, starting now. All right, so that's a minute. So now we'll go into our breakout groups, and you'll have about 5 minutes to discuss with your peers.
Really am enjoying this workshop. Thank you so much, Liesl, for putting this together.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad it's helpful.
I'm actually curious. If I wanted to get involved with PhD Balance, or if I know someone who does, what would be the process, or how does that work? I'm curious.
Yeah. So I think we actually just put out a call for volunteers on our social medias. And I think that the link is also live on our website under volunteers. But essentially, you just fill out an interest form and email us directly at email@phdbalance.com. You let us know that you're interested, and then you set up a brief meeting with me to talk about, what your interests are and where you might fit into the team. We talk about a few things about being a volunteer with us, and then you have to take at least 24 hours to think it over. And then at the end of that 24 hours or more, if you need more time, I send you some onboarding paperwork, and we get you on our Discord server as a moderator so that you can start talking with the other volunteers and team leaders. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's you're always looking for volunteers, or is it kind of like seasonal, or I'm just curious?
We're basically always looking for volunteers, to be quite frank.
Yeah.
There are a few times where we'll put out specific calls for volunteers, but we have had a surge of growth in the past couple of months. And so, man, I feel like I'm always asking our teams to put out a call for volunteers.
That's good though. It's growing. It's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's really awesome to see just kind of like how far this group has come, from like literally just an Instagram page to like a full-fledged like LLC volunteer organization.
Yeah, that's amazing to see, and it's really great. I actually heard about it from Twitter, so I'm like, I don't know how often, I'm not sure how people reach out to you from different like venues, how they hear about you. But I just literally thought it was a cold call email, and now we have this workshop. So it's pretty amazing. So it's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear that you found us from Twitter. Yeah, we get people from like literally every social media platform
Sure.
that we have.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's and the speaking team is something that we like just launched. You guys are actually our first like actual booking through the speaking
Really?
events.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's still special.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good. Cool, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you got that's partially why you got me and Faye is we're the ones who like already had a lot of the experience and have put together these talks.
So we
In
got the best of the best. That's
Oh.
awesome. That's good. That's really great.
Yeah. But yeah, we were super excited about this, and I was like, CASA, that sounds familiar. That sounds familiar. I was like, it's an IEEE thing. Yep, I know what this
Nice. Really, you heard about it. That's really cool. That's really
is.
nice.
Yeah, there was a CASA in the like a section 2 like Philly chapter
Oh, I
of
see.
IEEE. So that's how I knew the acronym.
Very intrigued. I'm wondering if we're affiliated with them or not. I will ask Elba. She's in charge. So
Yeah,
but
because
yeah.
what section are you guys in?
So we're just computer architecture, so it's pretty
Okay, so
spread
you guys
out.
aren't like affiliated with any particular chapter of
No, not yet.
IEEE. Okay,
Oh,
cool.
I guess maybe like SIGARCH and like the architecture or
Okay.
ACM, but that's not IEEE. Yeah, I'm not sure of the names.
I think it's called
Okay.
TCCA, if I'm not wrong.
TCCA, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because maybe it's just like a happenstance of similar acronyms, but
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Oh, and we're at sorry,
1 minute
23
mark.
seconds. So
Okay,
whenever you're ready.
Yep. Well. Yeah, an extra 30 seconds, I guess.
Yep. Hey, I'm always down with giving people more time to chat.
Yeah. Have the dogs come home yet or arrived?
No, I'm actually really shocked. I thought that they were coming home closer to 5, but they might maybe the wind died down, so they were trying to get in a few more rounds of frisbee.
That's nice.
Meanwhile, my dog, who I was just doing some socialization training with, is like passed out on the other couch. I was like concerned that he might like wake up and try to like crawl onto my laptop, but he's just like fast asleep. All right. Welcome back, everyone. So can I get like, maybe 2 or 3 people share what your group talked about, what you would do in the situation?
Okay, maybe I can go first. I guess like my advisor is very busy because he has like a large group. So a lot of the times, if you just send him on an email or something, it's gonna get pushed out. And so he always advises, and like it's kind of like mutually, we have come up to a term that like get him to set a time on his calendar where he's going to work on this. So you can like basically just set up a meeting with him on some particular day where you want to get his feedback from, like get a feedback from him. So like just set like how much of a time he's gonna take to like go over the entire paper, like set up that time, get the feedback from him, go work on it again. And then yeah, like once you have that time, then you have like one last like another one like a couple of days before the deadline where you have incorporated a lot of his feedback, and then he's just reading through the entire thing and then like just doing editorial stuff and things like that.
I love that. So like you have to set up like a working meeting
Yes.
and you get everything live. Hey, if that works for you, I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, I actually, for my students, I have something called a Calendly. And so I have like it like looks at my GCal, and students can like request a meeting of various lengths of time. And it automatically just goes on my calendar. It's lovely. So I feel that. Another person want to share out?
Yeah, one thing that came up in our breakout room, well, several anecdotal things about sort of how to manage your manager, but also finding casual interaction points, like whether it's on the way in and out of a group meeting or in the hallway. And we were remarking on how that's usually how we'd find those opportunities to remind our advisors, and that's been really hard this past year.
Yeah, I bet, because it's not like you have those like passing periods for sure. But yeah, like maybe, you know, if you hang on for a few seconds at the end of a Zoom or something, and I feel like that's probably the best you could do right now, but yeah. And do I have like one more person that wants to share out before we move on to our second practice? Okay, that's fine. We'll move on. All right, so we have our second and final practice before I bid you all adieu. So for this practice, you have an electrical engineering undergrad degree and just started graduate school working in a high voltage lab. Your advisor asks you to run a few experiments using the 5-to-1 wall transformer. You've never used a 5-to-1 wall transformer before, and your department doesn't offer training sessions on the new equipment. What do you do? So again, I will give you 1 minute to kind of think about this, and then we'll do some breakout sessions. And if wall transformers are not your thing, sub this in with any other difficult or dangerous piece of equipment you have in your lab. All right, so that's a minute. So let's go into breakout rooms for, let's do 4 minutes again, just as we're starting to butt up on time.
Hello again.
Hello. I was like trying to think about, because I had like this practice originally set up for like a group of like wet lab scientists, and so I like had like a microscopy example in there, and I was like, what's something mildly dangerous we do in electrical engineering? It's like, I can't think of much.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I love how you just plug in the most dangerous thing you can
I was
can
like,
think of.
high voltage. That seems relevant.
Uh-huh.
I did a summer fellowship as an undergrad out at Purdue, working in nuclear engineering, but we were working on using like cold atmospheric plasmas and like high frequency like pulses, high voltage, high frequency pulses to break open cancer cells. And so you have to get like really high voltages, like 1 kilovolt stuff to break open cells. And so And no one in this lab had any high voltage experience, and they just kind of were like, yeah, we found this like transformer in the back of the electrical engineering lab. It only has one label on it. The label's in German. I was like, great. I had my boyfriend at the time who spoke German translate it for me, and he's like, yeah, it just says don't get near water.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
you plug it in and like you didn't hear anything, which is like sketchy for a transformer.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, well, I'll just like put a resistor across the outputs and like try to measure it and see what's actually coming out. Like, and I'll make sure I don't use my left hand. Like, this will be fine. I didn't get a reading. I just heard a loud pop, and then the resistor
God.
was like burnt. And I just yanked the plug out of the wall and was like, I'm done.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I can't work on this.
Oh God. It's amazing that the safety label is in German.
It was in German, and it literally just said like, don't get near water. Like, it didn't have like a ratio or like anything on it. Just like, don't get wet.
That's so scary.
It
Thankfully,
was so
nothing more.
sketchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So now I have
a great story to run with
IEEE, yeah, practice problem
based on a true story.
based on reality. All right, we got about a minute left on my timer.
Alrighty. Okay.
I think on my Instagram I still have a picture of that resistor somewhere because I was just like, haha, I almost died this morning.
That's classic.
Yeah, typical.
Yeah, I remember, I think in elementary school, we were just learning about light bulbs and batteries and stuff, and the teacher said something along the lines of, don't put your hand too close. But we didn't hear that part, our group, because for some reason we were being loud. And so, but guess what we did? Thankfully, it was very low, like voltage and stuff, but it was, yep, got a little burn.
We definitely, in my labs in college, would lick the 9-volt batteries to see if they were dead or not, which
God.
like was probably the stupidest thing we could have done. But like, what else are college juniors to do when given a
Yeah.
9-volt battery? You know. All right. Looks like we're getting people back. So again, if I just want to have like 2 or 3 people share out, you know, what they would do in this scenario.
I can go ahead.
Yeah.
Usually, like, I faced this kind of issue before too, and usually what I do is I try to look up myself on the web, maybe literature review, do a literature review, or watch some lectures, and ask my colleagues about it. And if I'm taking too much time, like if I'm just wasting too much time just looking for it, or just not spending enough time on my work, then I would rather ping my advisor asking for more help. And in a lot of situations, maybe he cannot help me, right? But main thing that he can do is connect me to people who can, or like connect me to give me the information on how to work on this.
Yeah, I think that's great. So first you're going to try and find some other resources yourself. If that's taking too long or you can't find anything, you're going to ask your advisor and your colleagues. And if they don't know either, then they can help you find somebody who does, because somebody's got to know how to use it, right? I love that. I think that's a really great plan. Does somebody else want to share out what they might do in this situation?
Hey, yeah, so I was thinking that I guess like because you know that you have never used that equipment before, you might immediately want to communicate that with your advisor first, that hey, I don't know how to use this equipment, and there might be a learning curve for me to pick it up, so give me some more time than like directly jumping to running the experiments. Yeah, so like maybe first letting them know that you have not used it so that you can get some help from them if they know anyone, or try to like help you collect, as Sarabjit said. And then, yeah, like try to find resources after that.
Yeah, I think that's great. So, just letting your advisor know right off the back, like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. And that's okay because I'm a student and we never had to do this in my class as an undergrad. I think that's awesome. And then, getting the help you need from there is great. And the other thing that I really like about that is, in the case of this 5-to-1 wall transformer, obviously it's very dangerous. And so don't just go messing around with it. But in other cases where you might have lab equipment that's just like, you don't know how to use it, but it's not necessarily dangerous. If you were to accidentally break that piece of equipment, because your advisor, for some reason is forcing you to just go figure it out yourself, letting them know like up in advance, like I don't know what I'm doing, kind of like saves your butt if that's the case. And that's again, like that's a worst case scenario. Like I'm not saying that that's going to happen to you, but in that worst case scenario, that's a solid strategy for just making sure everyone is aware. I don't know about this thing. Yeah. Anyone else want to share out? Or I feel like those are two really solid strategies to use. Okay.
I guess another aspect to it might be like, I guess like coming back to the honesty question, and as Abdul Rahman said, like culture plays into it. Like, and coming as an undergrad, you might not be willing to tell your advisor that you don't know how to use it and might want to think that you'll figure it out. So how do you, how can the advisor help in that front to make sure that that like you're handing over an equipment to someone and you're creating that environment for them to communicate whether they know to use it or not?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, it can be intimidating to tell your advisor you don't know something, especially when you're new. So part of it is just kind of like more or less getting over that. But part of it is also like hopefully your advisor is the kind of person that they will say like, hey, I'd like you to go run this experiment using this equipment. Do you have experience with that? Like, have you done that before? Do you have questions? And making it okay to ask those questions. Definitely. Awesome. So it looks like we have about 4 minutes left in my time here today. And I have loved all of the participation. You guys have asked amazing questions and probed on different parts of this that I think are like awesome things to, pick at. Everyone's relationship with their advisor is unique, and everyone has struggles with that relationship on both ends. So, finding ways to manage that relationship can be so critical. And I hope that you've learned some skills here today that you can take with you, so that you can just have that healthier communication and relationship with your advisor, to really get some solid like PhD work going, and feel better while you're doing it. If you have any questions specific for me, my handle for Instagram and Twitter is there at the bottom. You can always DM me or just ping me directly publicly. You can also email me, liesl.a.krause@gmail.com is my personal email. Feel free to let me know any other questions you might have. And then, definitely check out PhD Balance. We're on all of the major socials, and we have our email. It's email@phdbalance.com. And our website is phdbalance.com, and you can find other resources there. We have a Discord, so if you're looking to talk to other graduate students about, how graduate school sucks sometimes, we have stuff going over there like daily 24/7 because we're international. So there's always somebody to vent to. But if you guys have any more questions or comments, thank you again for being such an awesome audience. I'm so happy to have been able to do this for you guys today.
Thank you, Liesl. Thank everyone for good thinker. This is amazing. Really, really appreciate it. Yeah, this has been great. Does anyone have any last minute questions for Liesl before we bid her adieu? Yeah. Great. I think we do have all these contact information, and this has been an awesome session, and it is going to be recorded, and hopefully we'll share it with others online. So yeah, this has been awesome, and really appreciate it, Liesl, PhD Balance, Faye, and everyone involved for having us and joining CASA for this event, and this has been really great. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.